Today is Monday, December 18th, 2017. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. It is 7:34. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
That's good. No.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before I ask the clerk to call roll, I would ask, I don't think there's anybody in Elmhurst who's not aware that we lost a legend on Saturday the 9th. Our friend and mentor Joe Newton passed away after a short illness. I could list all of Joe's accomplishments, but we would be here till midnight. While coaching at York, Joe Newton led the York Dukes to 28 state championships. During his tenure, York won 44 state trophies overall. He coached an amazing 63 years, 61 of them at York. I would ask that you all join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family during this holiday season. Clerk Spencer, the roll, please.
Sabatino.
Here.
Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Toledo.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Conquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We have a quorum. On to agenda item 3, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has anything written they wish to submit at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Anything written? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public forum portion of our meeting. This is time in our meeting when anyone in the public may address the council on any item they so choose. After you've been identified, we ask that you move to the microphone on my right, where we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes based on the amount of work we have to get done here this evening, and also based on the, out of respect for others who may want to also participate in public forum. If you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. Clerk Spencer, at this time, is there anybody who has signed up for public forum?
Yes, Mayor. I'll start with Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys. I received a letter this week. Envelope said Simmons. There was no letter from Simmons. It was a copy of a city letter with its letterhead. What I'm asking is, can any contractor that has contract with the city send out a letter under the symbol of the city of Elmhurst? Wasn't a letter written by Simmons either. Thought the city wanted to protect its symbol, but I guess it doesn't. A lot of states and cities are considering, even in Cook County, the illegalization of marijuana. Doesn't cure anything. It isn't health beneficial. The stated reason is the money. The whole thing comes down to money. Let alone we have laws that if you're under the influence and you're driving, you don't drive much further. If a company takes a medical test and use the product, they bounce you. Let alone cities, counties, states, think it's a wonderful idea. Why? if the only thing is money? Because when the health problems start developing, what do then? They'll have spent it all. It's sad commentary that we elect people that the only reason they pass a bill is so they can collect money, and the health of the people of the United States has no bearing on it at all. Cook County's already going to have it on the ballot. Sad commentary, isn't it? We elect you to look out for us. They're not doing a very good job, are they? Lastly, I got a wish. Mayors in this town run off to the Chamber of Commerce and make all kinds of comments about how wonderful the city is. I'm asking that the mayors of this town have a meeting with the public. Explain to them how wonderful things are. On this agenda, whole list of general obligation bonds and some new ones coming up. It's all going to pass. That for the benefit. I'm sure the mayor could explain it to the residents. Plenty of places in town to hold it.
Mr. Pagash, you're at your 3 minutes. I'd ask you to wrap up, please.
Commercial enterprises already know what they got. They'll already have advice on what they want.
Ron Silver, 182 North York Street, Citizen Advocacy Center. Did I say Ron?
Yeah, it's Ben.
Ben, sorry. I think Ron's famous. Sorry.
I think Ben is. I don't know.
That's okay. Good evening. Ben Silver with the Citizen Advocacy Center. CAC is a nonprofit, nonpartisan community legal organization. I'm here tonight with some questions about item 7.2 on the agenda. It's a report on what I'm assuming will be called TIF 6, which is the apparently a brand new TIF district being proposed for the downtown area, which is currently, I believe, under TIF 1 for a few more years. I don't have an opinion on this particular plan, and the problem is my first notice of this was yesterday when I checked for the agenda, and I think a lot of people are in that same boat where this is really the first they've heard of a new TIF in Elmhurst beyond TIF 5. I understand that the agenda from last meeting did include a report related to services for the TIF, though if you looked just at the agenda, you really wouldn't have been able to tell it was for a new TIF. I come to most of these meetings, probably about 95% of the meetings, and this was the first notice I got. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people in Elmhurst, maybe including some people on the dais, weren't aware that this is going on. This is an area that mostly has been in a TIF for going on 31 years now, I believe, and has a few more left under TIF 1. And we're talking about capping the current EAV on there for another 23 years, which will most likely be extended to, was it 35 or 36 years in the end. You know, my concern is that this has not been fully evaluated. I understand that there are opportunities down the line for people to comment on this, for the council to either go forward with it or not, to make changes with it, but it really does become more and more difficult as this goes on. I think that's illustrated by the fact that on the consent agenda tonight, item 6.35 is actually a resolution approving services that would be pursuant to this TIF. That's happening before this recommendation, before this report has been voted on or even discussed by the City Council. I really think that's putting the cart before the horse and illustrates the speed with which this is going forward. This will be the first time that the full council has discussed it tonight. The resolution, I believe, will be approved at the next meeting. These are both meetings during the holiday season. Certainly a low point for public participation this time of year. I really hope that the City Council will both consider slowing this down and maybe give some explanation to why this does need to go forward so quickly when there are several years still left on TIF 1. Thank you.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine.
Kathleen Sullivan.
It's the last meeting of the year, so I wanted to reflect and look back on 2017, which, from my standpoint, was a really successful year, project-wise. Last week at the Public Works meeting, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I hope I'm getting the numbers right, I think they said that 9 projects were implemented and wrapped up this past year, as well as taking 233 houses out of the 100-year flooding zones. And that's great. That's about 25% of the homes that were flooding back in 2010, and that's the ones that reported, so it could be a higher number. So that's really great progress, and a lot of new projects on the agenda coming up to continue to possibly even double that number, I think. There's so many more houses that are affected by some of the coming projects. So just you guys can reflect on having a really successful year. Thanks.
That's all who signed in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's it for public forum for those who signed in. At this time, is there anybody in the audience who did not have an opportunity to sign in our sign-in sheet but still wishes to address council at this time? If so, please raise your hand so I can get a count. Anybody who did not have an opportunity to sign in but wishes to address council at this time? Seeing none, that concludes public forum for this evening. Announcements. Any announcements from the dais? Seeing none, we'll go on to the consent agenda. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda that any alderman wishes to have removed, to vote no or provide further comment? Alderman Graham.
6.6.
6.6, Alderman Levin.
613.
613 and 616. Anyone else? Is that the right one? 613?
Yeah, and 6.6.
And 6.6, yes. Okay, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.6 and 6.13. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman Leader. Clerk Spencer.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polemski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda minus item 6.6 and 6.13 is approved. On to item 6.6. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation. This is a report out of Public Works.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Building Committee that the land exchange with Edward Elmhurst Health as described herein be approved, that the current access easement be voided, and that the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents, included plats, for the city council approval. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Marty Deuter, Vice Chairman, Norm Leader. Unsigned by Michael J. Bram.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report, and recommendation is read. Motion by Alderman Kennedy, second by Alderman Deuter. Alderman Kennedy, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a pretty self-explanatory report. Edwards Elmhurst Healthcare came to us, basically wants to do a land swap of property that we have in exchange for property that they have. Ultimately gives us two things. Number one, it's I think a $10 to $11 million project for new construction in the downtown to take a building that they say is admittedly a little tired, put up a new building, certainly state-of-the-art for their purposes. And the other piece it gives us is, by doing the land swap, it could potentially mean a large parcel on what would be ultimately the corner of Haven and First, going eastward for potential redevelopment in the future. So we met as a committee. There were a number of questions that were posed to city staff. City staff came back. Majority of us on the committee signed the report, and so I'll defer to Alderman Bram as he hold the report.
Alderman Bram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did not sign the report, and I wanted to have the opportunity to explain why. Excuse me. Yes, it I think overall, in theory and concept, this is a good deal for all. But I do have concerns when the city, in this case, or the residents of Elmhurst are getting, albeit slight, some would argue slight, would be getting the lesser end of the deal. In this case, the lesser end of the deal is less square footage. The land swap is not equivalent. I mean, yes, it's small, it's 70 square feet difference, so it is minimal in the grand scheme of things. But we're also losing parking. And again, it's small, being anywhere from 2 to 4 parking spaces. But as we all know, probably, if not the number one, the top 3 complaints that we always get is parking, parking, parking. And that actually might be 1, 2, and 3. So even though we're losing or anywhere from 2 to 4 parking spots and only 70 square feet, and I don't want to trivialize either of those, I think that the city should always be coming on the, I guess, the benefit when we're doing a land swap, because as stated before, all of our property that the city owns is an asset. And my feeling is that we should be good stewards of that asset, and taking a hit on square footage as well as parking spaces, I don't think is an even trade and a win for the Elmhurst residents.
Okay, any additional comments? Clerk Spencer, I ask you to call the vote.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Brand.
No.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Muliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
That is 13 ayes and 1 nays.
13 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 6.6 is approved. On to agenda item 6.13. This is an ordinance. Clerk Spencer, I ask you to read the ordinance.
6.13, correct. Okay, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of the redevelopment agreement by and between G&G Investments, Inc. and the City of Elmhurst, DuPage and Cook Counties, Illinois. It's Len's Ace Hardware.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. Alderman Honquist?
This particular item has been reviewed by 3 committees for different reasons at different times. I think it's been well vetted. I'll give the floor to Alderman Levin.
Alderman Levin, I know you're the only committee that didn't review it.
And that's my complaint.
He's gonna
There are a lot
pull
of
back
public
his
safety issues here on this. Actually, I wasn't quite aware it was coming out of DPZ, but I'll reflect back when we talked about this originally, which I think it was in conjunction with the January 2016 report out of Finance Committee. So when we go back, the current owner bought the store, the hardware store, and as I expressed at that time, it was a store that had not been kept up to date. The past owner really hadn't invested much in the property. It was tired, run down. The new owner came in, and he operates a very good store, one of the best hardware stores you could ever go to, Len's out on Lake Street in Addison, and I would assume that the price he negotiated would reflect what he was getting for that investment. So at that point, the new owner had already made a decision to buy. This is the money we're talking about is TIF. The I is for incentive, I think. So I see what's happened there. It's an improved store, better hours, better selection, better looking. But we've already given away a right-of-way. We've given land. We've given a $10,000 retail grant, a $20,000 facade grant. And I think it's enough. And I'm not against development. I hesitated to pull it because it's not a big amount of money. It's less than they asked for, but I just don't think it's appropriate. I voted against the report when it originally came up 2 years ago. I'm going to vote against the ordinance. It does not affect the remainder of the package, which is in a I think we already passed it, come to think of it, which is the land and the right-of-way. I just don't see this as appropriate use of
Okay.
city dollars.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. Okay?
I'm done, thank you.
All right, any additional comments? Clerk Spencer, I ask you to call the vote.
Get my sheet here. Sabatino,
Aye.
Deuter,
No.
Dunn,
Aye.
Leader,
Aye.
Polumsky,
Aye.
Graham,
No.
Toledo,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Levin,
No.
Park,
Aye.
Conquist,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
11 ayes and 3 nays.
11 ayes, 3 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 6.13 is approved. On to section 7 of our agenda. 7.1. It's a report out of out of finance. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare an amendment to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, changing the water rate, sewer rate, and capital investment recovery charges as outlined above, effective for usage billed on or after January 2nd, 2018. The FCAAS Committee further recommends that the city attorney prepare an amendment to the Municipal Code of Ordinances to include both cubic meter rates and per thousand gallon rates for fiscal year 2018 as outlined above. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Mark P. Sabatino, Vice Chairman, Tina Park, and Mike Brennan.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Sabatino. Alderman York, your report.
Thank you, Your Honor. So this is the annual report that we look at every year to adjust water and sewer rates. This is a user fee out of the Municipal Utility Fund. We've scoured it up and down. Pretty much all of our findings are listed in the report. It's, of course, always not a lot of fun when rates are increasing, but this has been on the horizon. I think last year the rate increase was more in the neighborhood of 12, 13%. We knew at that point in time we would be looking at a number very similar to what we're proposing here. So there really are no surprises. You know, looking forward even further, we kind of see that next year will be about the same, maybe a little bit less than this year, and then we see some flattening. The thing that's most concerning, well, there's a lot of things that are concerning, but the MUF is another one of the city's cash funds that pertains to this enterprise fund, and it's struggling. And we have the fiduciary responsibility to make decisions to get that fund within prescribed ranges, and part of the increase that we're looking at here is to do just that. So we're doing our job. Our job isn't always giving people ice cream and puppies. This is a responsible decision and one that's not easy, but it has to be done. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Alderman Bram?
Thank you. As Alderman York, Chairman York already stated, I mean, this is a tough pill to swallow. It's a significant increase, to be blunt. I was wondering if the committee considered a smaller increment over a longer period of time compared to what looks to be, I forgot my calculations at home, but in some cases a 50% increment. Is there a more palatable path, I guess is the question, compared to the 50% increase, at least from the CIRC perspective.
Alderman York, any follow-up?
Sure. That's a good question. There wasn't really anything that wasn't discussed in committee about this. And I think that, to answer your question specifically, Alderman Bram, I think that it really boils down to equity. If we were to do something like that, that means that today's users would be paying less than what it costs to really operate the system. If they lived here for a year and did that and then they moved out, they would have gotten out without, paying their fair share. And again, it's a user fee, so, something that was discussed, but certainly a great observation, but this is the right way to do it in the committee's opinion.
Follow up?
Yeah.
And if you can, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to put you on the spot. The report stated that we're below the 25%, what is, I believe, self-imposed. How far below are we, and how long have we been below the 25% minimum cash balance?
We officially established the ranges about 3 years ago, and we've been barely above zero for all 3 years. So I think, I don't know, we're in the $1 to $3 million range, but we're nowhere close to where we should be on this.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman York, I'm sorry.
I have a question for Alderman York.
Alderman Levin, you want to pose a question to the world, and we'll see if Alderman York responds.
I hope so. I just don't want to be misled when you talk about a 50% increase, but for the people who are looking at this in the audience or at home, it's not a 50%, your water rates aren't going up 50%. Is it a 3% average increase or something like that?
Alderman York, you want to summarize the increase?
It's about a 5%. I'm looking at the water rate at 3 and the sewer at 2 and the CIRC. So it says in the report here it's probably more like 6. So it does say down here.
3 and 2.
3 and 2, 5?
3 and 2 is 5.
Yeah, 5%.
Thank you.
It's a 6.6.
Somewhere between 5 and 6.6. Any additional comments? Clerk Spencer.
Yes.
Let's see here. I've
6
got
points.
a sheet here that, my sheet is out of order, so would that be okay if I used this incorrect sheet?
Where are we supposed to start?
We were supposed to start at Ward 1. This one is Ward 7. Or do you want me to just
Council, we okay? Council is
improvise?
nodding they're okay, Clerk Spencer.
Is that okay?
We're going to roll with it on this one.
I apologize for the
Apology accepted. Hit the vote.
inconvenience and error. Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Dorder.
Aye.
Dorder.
Aye.
Dunn.
Done it
Aye.
twice.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Toledo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Agenda item 7.1 is approved. On to agenda item 7.2. It's a report out of DP&Z Committee. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation. She can have this if she needs it.
Okay,
She got it?
I've got this. Okay. It is therefore the recommendation of the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee that the City Council approve the resolution for the potential TIF redevelopment area for downtown. The committee is also requesting that the proposed TIF report and redevelopment plan be placed on file with the city, Elmhurst City Clerk, no later than December 19, 2017. The draft resolution and redevelopment plan and project are attached for your review. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for city council approval. Signed by Michael Honquist, Chairman, Noel Toledo, Vice Chairman, and Mark A. Mulliner.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. Alderman Honquist, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight I'm going to be making a motion to suspend the rules to let Mr. Rashicki from Kane McKenna do a presentation and answer any questions City Council has for the specific elements of this report and why a TIF makes sense. I'm just going to make a few comments to get us started, and then I'll turn it over to City Manager Grabowski after the motion. So this is come before our committee, and we've discussed it on a couple of different occasions, maybe actually 3 at this point. The point of the TIF, as you'll see outlined, it's a smaller version of downtown than what is currently under TIF, but it's an area that you will find out through the facts is still very much within the guidelines of a TIF. And we'll go through some of those specifics in a minute, but in general, what I wanted to comment on is there is a lot of development going on in downtown right now. I think we've all seen that. And a lot of that has occurred in the last 5 years in particular. And when I first moved to Elmhurst, one of the reasons I always heard why downtown was kind of quiet and there weren't a lot of retail shops is because we were competing with Oak Brook, and that many of the major retailers, for different code reasons or, agreements with Oak Brook, could not be located with a second store that close to a major outlet like Oak Brook. And it's obvious that we compete with Oak Brook on a regular basis, whether it's for retail or restaurants or any kind of corporate locations. That's what Oak Brook is built for, and most people know them. And I went through downtown this weekend, and the number of restaurants we have, and not just restaurants, but good restaurants that have moved to Elmhurst, to me, is outstanding. And the things I think we've been doing as a council, I'm very proud of where our city's going. I'm very proud of where downtown's going, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I think as we look at this and we consider where downtown is, and you take a listen to some of the facts on the age of some of the buildings and the large parcels that we're including in this, and this TIF makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense to continue to do what we've been doing really for the last 20 years, which is to continue and invest in Elmhurst, and in particular our downtown, which is the core of the city, and continue to grow and push as much life and energy there as we can. So I'm strongly, and I think I speak for the whole committee, we're strongly behind this TIF. And I'd ask for everyone's support, and I'll let Bob from Kane McKenna go through some of the details. So right now, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can let Mr. McKenna address.
Okay, motion to suspend the rules, allow Mr. McKenna to address, Mr. Rich Lickey from Kane McKenna.
Oh, from Kane McKenna, sorry.
Mr. Rich Lickey from Kane McKenna to address the council. Motion by Alderman Honquist, second by Alderman Toledo. We're going to do this by voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Mr. Rich Lickey,
Thank you.
the floor is yours. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to let City Manager Grabowski set it up before you get started, and then we'll turn it over to you.
Yes, and as we're commenting, we'll pull up a couple of visual aids. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
So the question that we've received as we've gone through this process is why now? As the chairman pointed out, downtown is redeveloping and redeveloping well, but it has been through a number of efforts. I'm sure a lot of you get compliments on the downtown, as I do from a lot of my colleagues, but I tell them it's not easy. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of money that's involved in making our downtown as successful as it is. And so as we look at the expiration, the coming expiration of TIF 1, which is 2021, we kind of walked it back, and as we talk to developers on a weekly basis, Assistant City Manager Kopp and Business Development Coordinator Jason talk to developers on a weekly basis about opportunities that might be available in our downtown area. And when you walk it back to the expiration of the TIF and opportunities that we can partner with these developers, the math doesn't add up. Because by the time a developer starts the process right now, gets approval, starts construction and finishes it, and the EAV gets onto the tax rolls, there's maybe a year left in increment that we can offer to these people, and the math doesn't add up for the investment. And so Assistant Manager Kopp, myself, Finance Director Trozine, and a number of other staff people, and with the help of Mr. Schlicke, we talked about the opportunity of ending TIF 1 early and putting a new TIF in place, a smaller TIF, as Chairman Honquist said, that would involve less properties, but really outline the core of the community, of the downtown area, which is what needs the most help. So, Bob, if you can turn to the first slide. So what we have up on this map is an outline. It's a little difficult to read, but what I'll show you is the blue outline is the original TIF 1. You see that there are a number of white areas within those blue lines. Those are properties that have been released from the TIF. If you recall, in our budget we indicate this, but most poignantly at the JRB meetings, we outline this each year. We have actually released more than half of the EAV in TIF 1. And that has been to the benefit of all of the taxing bodies. Once that's been developed and released, they get to collect the property tax on that for new growth. So that is a big point. In this map, the purple indicates a new TIF, a proposed new TIF. Downtown TIF is what it's called. And it does look big, but we'll show you in the next slide. What we've done is we've proposed to include a number of publicly owned properties, whether it's the city, the park district, the school district, even the YMCA, into this. Because what we've learned as we've worked through our other TIF districts is there's opportunities for us to partner with the schools in the park district beyond the sharing agreements that we've done, but opportunities to partner with them on redevelopment and improvements to their properties. And so what we've done, and we've labeled this map, and I'm not sure if they're in front of everybody, they're on board docs so you can see them. What we've done is labeled all of the public properties on here. And so when you look at this map compared to the boundaries of the new TIF, which is outlined in red, you can see that significant difference when you factor in Wilder Park, the library, Hawthorne School, the District 205 Center, the YMCA, City Hall. There's a number of them that are included here. And I believe the next slide compares them side by side so you can see the difference. And what we're really talking about in this new proposed TIF district is the core of downtown, which reaches from really Adelaide on the south up to 3rd Street on the north, and really in between Addison and York. And I know Mr. Schlicke is going to go through a number of the qualifications, but as you look through that area, the obsolescence of the buildings, of the layout, really lends itself to another redevelopment area. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schlicke now to go through the qualifications that we've been discussing, and we're happy to answer questions afterwards, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, Bob Schlicke with Kane McKenna. And two things as an overview I just want to bring up. One brought up by Alderman Honquist and also by Manager Grabowski. One, you know, for the area in question, the work is not done. I mean, from what the City Council has reviewed in your 2016 update on the downtown plan and a lot of work that you've done this year as it relates to zoning changes, you're constantly finding that you have to recalibrate as changes in the marketplace occur. I mean, what you did 5 or 7 years ago, it's great, but things constantly change. You know, just as an example, you know, the retail market, again, dramatic differences nationwide, dramatic differences within our local marketplace. Questions relating or changes as it relates to mixed use and in particular residential projects, impacts that they have on parking, circulation, infrastructure. You know, that's something that you have to constantly respond to. And also as you know, Jim indicated, it's a math problem. You've had TIF, the TIF is there, but the numbers change. In order to get projects financed 4 years that's remaining is not going to be enough. I mean, based on the constant challenges, recalibration, you know, I think the city is reacting. I mean, based on work that you've done already, this is a part of a proactive approach as it relates to the redevelopment and continued vibrancy of the downtown. You've already indicated that the downtown, you know, based on your 2016 plan, is still a center and want it to be remaining vibrant as well as competitive in a larger area or a larger marketplace. We seem to have a technical issue. Okay, thank you. And again, why now? There's an issue as it relates to interest. I think part of what you know, Jim mentioned earlier is there has been some interest in that core area that we see, and in order to capture that and to continue growth, the TIF is part of your tool bag. I mean, part of the tool bag has been your planning, zoning, other entitlements, but you know, key issues, and we're going to get into it on the eligibility factors that are, again, endemic to downtown developments, have to do with the age of the infrastructure, the age of the building inventory, the piecemeal development that occurred in the past, circulation and access and egress issues, coordination of parking, coordination of loading and unloading. These are still issues that we face, or you face in the downtown area. Again, from the examination of that core area inventory, about 85% of those buildings are in excess of 35 years old or greater. 70% are actually 50 years old or greater, and about 40% are between the age span of 80 to 100 years. I mean, there are challenges as it relates to making those buildings competitive for rentals, as well as retrofitting them in terms of competition within the marketplace. Again, as I stressed earlier, this is not done in a vacuum. The city has, not only in the past TIF plans, but also other planning initiatives and other funding that has occurred in the downtown. You know, this is tied into a continuation of keeping the downtown a vibrant sector within the community. You know, TIF financing, again, the good news is it's not a new tax. It's capturing, as you've done on other TIFs, as well as the Central Business District TIF, new revenues that associate with growth within the area are funneled back for eligible costs within the TIF. Again, the idea is you want that blue line to keep going up over what the base values are when the TIF is set up. You know, from the standpoint of this area, again, I just want to reiterate, the footprint is not the same as the older TIF. The city's been releasing properties in the past and would continue to do so with the new TIF, of which the focus would be, again, on some of the institutional properties, as well as that core group that is between York Street and Addison. In order to qualify, the state law is pretty specific. You first, if you're going to go qualification-wise, there has to be an identification of the age of the buildings and do you meet the threshold factor. The threshold factor in this case is 50% or more of the buildings have to be 35 years old or greater. That finding is met using permit data, other data from the town or from the township assessor's office. We were able to validate that the age. There's 13 factors under the TIF Act, of which you have to identify 3 that are present within the area. We identified 5. Those are obsolescence, and that's directly tied to the age of some of the structures, the characteristics of those structures as it relates to their characteristics, the ability for them to be competitive. Deterioration was also observed for primarily site improvements, but again, some of the buildings also demonstrated deterioration as it relates to some of the building components. Inadequate utilities we reviewed with City Public Works and Engineering, and there's 3 or 4 primary components: the water and sewer systems in terms of their age and capacity, stormwater detention, and last but not least, utility relocation in terms of the ability to either go underground or bury utilities and allow for development to occur that's attractive and aesthetic in terms of modern development patterns. Deleterious layout, and again, we utilize some of the studies, not only referenced in the 2016 plan, but some prior traffic studies. And this relates to not only some of the circulatory patterns that are within the downtown, but also some of the transitional uses as it relates to either some of the institutional use to the west and also some of the residential and single-family uses that surround the downtown. Again, when the downtown was originally developed, the reliance on automobile traffic, consumer traffic, competitive locations that have accessible and easy parking, those are obstacles that have to be overcome within any older downtown area. And last is the lagging and declining EAV. Again, from the standpoint of the TIF Act, for 3 out of 5 years, you have to evidence if there's a declining EAV. We have that. For 4 out of 5 years, the threshold is 3. Did the area lag behind the balance of the city? That's also present. And lastly, for 3 out of 5 years, does it lag behind that of the CPI? And again, we also have that factor present. So that factor pulls in all 3 possible qualifications under the TIF. For the TIF plan, we have to identify for the other districts as well as the city what the base EAV would be, and this is the amount from that previous chart. That was the blue line, what districts, including the city, are allowed to continue to levy upon, and that's $25,871,000. Again, that would be confirmed by the county clerk's office once the TIF goes forward. And projected EAV, this is where, again, you would hope the game is worth the candle as it relates to what development could occur. And again, these were based on assumptions, but it would have, based on those assumptions, it would have seemed that there's growth for 3 to 4 times over the base over the term of the TIF district. The TIF budget, which would be included in the TIF plan, it goes over the full 23 years, and it only is used for TIF-eligible costs. So, for example, private construction is not an eligible cost, but infrastructure, rehabilitation, those are eligible costs, as well as assembly or consolidation of properties. The proposed land uses would continue what you've seen in your downtown, retail, commercial, and residential mixed uses. And in addition, there would also be the institutional uses that Mr. Grabowski identified on the TIF boundary map. And again, a key finding by the city in this case, and it's again based in part upon the market and some of the characteristics of the qualification factors that we saw, that but for the TIF, your vision, city vision as it relates to redevelopment for the area would not be able to go forward. So we found all of that to be present. This would start, we are at the very beginning of the process as it relates to the public review, including that by the taxing districts. In January, early January, the City Council would consider a resolution to set the Joint Review Board meeting, which is the meeting with the taxing districts, in which the plan and the city's redevelopment activities are reviewed, and then a public hearing sometime in I think either late February or early March in order to get comments from the general public. There will be, over that same time period, January through March, a whole series of notices. Notices to taxpayers within the district, to all of the taxing districts of record, including the state of Illinois, and also notices to residential or other and commercial addresses within 750 feet of the TIF, and 2 general newspaper notices. So there are a large number of notices that would have to be done over that period of time, but again, the idea is to get the word out as it relates to what the city's redevelopment plans are for that area. So it does not, the decision-making process does not occur in a vacuum. That would conclude our presentation or summary at this point.
Okay, Mr. Richlicki is available for questions. I want to hit on one of the things Mr. Richlicki mentioned just at the very end of his presentation, is that this is the beginning of the public review. This approval tonight is the approval to start a public conversation. It's not the end and final decision by any means. Right. And as it's stated on this slide, we'll be discussing it for the next 3 months.
Yep.
Any questions for Mr. Richlicki? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. Just going back to the last slide, when you are talking about the base EAV, for clarification, that would be with the release of the current TIF and then re-TIF,
Correct. That would be the new starting point, so to speak, as it relates to the downtown TIF district, yes. And it would occur after the release.
Additional questions or comments? Alderman Levin, and I'll vote Alderman Brand.
I don't have a question, but I think, sorry, what we have has been talked about by Alderman Honquist and others in terms of what our downtown has doesn't just happen, it's work. I mean, we've had an excellent staff, and it's something that developed over the years. When the recession hit, one of the things we cut out of the budget was planning. As we got past the recession, we started reinvesting in planning. We've had a number of studies that have helped us look forward in the downtown, and in particular, and in the north side, heading north. We've also invested in making zoning changes so that it's more attractive for developers to come here and change and make changes without having to jump through all the zoning hoops that we had before. So we've made Elmhurst very attractive for development. And TIF isn't just about giving out our money, but it's about having the tool to also consolidate parcels and to make things happen that without a TIF program, we might not be able to do. So I think this is a very good way to proceed. I think it's measured. There was a comment about Oak Brook, and we've always talked in the years I've been involved about how it's hard to compete because they have all the retailers and we're within the 5-mile non-compete. We can't do that. But the world's shifting so that Oak Brook's looking, and people who are involved in shopping centers are concerned because retail is happening online. And so maybe what we're building here, that kind of hometown feel, entertainment, smaller shops, is something that may be more appealing. We're planning, we're allowing time and resources to build. If we don't stay out in front and keep planning, we're going to fall behind. So I think we're on the right track, and I fully support this.
Alderman Braham.
Thank you. A few questions, if I may, one of which Alderman Palomsky already made mention, but I want to follow up on that. I understand the base being 25 million and what's forecasted after 23 additional years would either triple, if not quadruple, according to the report that we just saw, which is definitely a good thing to see. What I was wondering if you knew, or maybe city staff knows, in regards to, what about our current TIF, TIF 1? What was our base back in the day, 33 years ago? And then what at the end of that TIF was the EAV? I'd like to kind of have a good understanding of what that comparison is to kind of correlate on these numbers. Are these numbers typical from an Elmhurst standard or even other communities standard? 23 years, I just want to say, is a very long time. The downtown area, Central Business District, has been under TIF control as we sit here today for 33 years, I believe, give or take a few months. That's a significant amount of time. At the end of the day, it would be 36 years. And then we're looking or discussing tonight to tack on 23 more years. So 59 years of being under TIF control. There's definitely pros and cons, but what does it look like? What is the landscape of our previous TIF, if you happen to know that, and also correlate it to other communities?
Well, as it relates to...
Well, do you have the numbers? Because I know city manager's trying to pull them up right now. We do have those figures.
Right, and there's one complication as it relates to answering that question, is that, you know, the city has released properties over the course of time, you know, I think 2004, 2006, 2012. So, you know, where you are right now is the base is about a little over 18 million according to county records. And, but of that, the 2016 value, I think, is a little over, or is over 39 million, almost 40 million. You've released probably about another in excess of almost 40, well, close to 40 million. So if you would add those two numbers, and this is just rough and ready, like I said, there's some work that has to be done because of the releases, but if you look at that 80 million, let's say, compared to the 18, that's almost a factor of 4 to 1. In other downtowns that we've worked in, I mean, you know, like the largest one, the Evanston TIF closed about 4 years ago, and when we closed that TIF, I mean, it's one of our clients, the EAV was 135 million. When they started, that TIF was primarily industrial and institutional properties in that downtown. Their base was 4 million. That's a nice return. They're not all like that, I may say. I mean, if from a practitioner standpoint, if you could be 3 to 5 times your initial value, you've done a fine job.
Thank you. In regards to timeline to creating a TIF, I mean, recently we've created a handful, being TIF, I'm starting to lose count of the numbers here, TIF 4, as well as whatever the new Lake Street TIF is called. What is the timeline it takes to create a TIF? We're talking, I know you put up on the slides, you know, January to March being, you know, public communication, but
right.
Is that approximately from, as we sit here today, if we move forward through March, is that 4 months, the time that it takes to get through all the hoops?
Yes. I mean, again, from our standpoint, when we do one of these timetables, we usually advise our clients that you're looking at a minimum of 3 to 4 months, and that's usually set by law because of the domino effect of the TIF Act. There are certain spacing between the events that have to be factored in, so that really kind of, you're not going to do better than 3 to 4 months, let's say.
3 to 4 months minimum, up to 6 maybe.
It could be up to 6, depending on meeting schedules, but you're at about 3 or 4 minimum just because of the spacing.
Gotcha. That's all the questions I have for, and I don't want to say your name because I might butcher it, Mr.
Rich Licky. Thank you. Any
Bob
other
is
questions
good.
for Mr. Rich Licky? Alderman York.
Thank you. I don't really have so much questions, but just kind of observations. First of all, I think that, you know, we heard, and I don't normally respond to public comment, but that we need to assume that a TIF is going to be extended. I'm on the record as saying, you know, TIF 1 was extended only pretty much at the request of another taxing body. The city extended the TIF to help a taxing body out and meet some needs that they had. So I don't, after discussion with city staff, as I said before, I don't believe it would have happened had that not occurred. So I don't think we need to just make the assumption that if we TIF something today, it's going to be extended automatically. I think that another thing in downtown, a lot of people have noted that all the work we've done here to, you know, move forward in TIF 1 and then re-TIFing, what this really does is this leverages the success of the work that we've already done for all the taxing bodies. As we just finished discussing, the frozen base will actually increase, therefore other taxing bodies will get a benefit as soon as this happens. You know, it's very real and very economic. So I think we're leveraging the success. It does, as was pointed out, make the investment math work for projects that are, you know, still being found. It sends a message to the business community that Elmhurst is continuing to be interested in developing its downtown and making it a vibrant economic place for businesses to come. We have to take care of our downtown. Yeah, we've been in it for 33 years, but I always kind of use this when I'm talking about people. If we'd have taken a snapshot of downtown at year 1, at year 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, things don't get to a point and just stay that way. They keep moving and keep evolving, and the picture keeps changing. And there has to be a way to fund and make those changes and keep the downtown, this economic area, relevant in the broader environment. Another thing that we really, I think, shortchange a lot too is that we've had some discussions in the past about SSAs. We have an SSA in our downtown where taxpayers are making an investment of over $800,000 annually, and I believe a lot of it is based on the fact that there's a TIF there. They wouldn't be probably making this investment if the TIF wasn't there. So we have to look at that over, do the math, over 20 years, that's, $16 million that is going to be kind of put into the economy, if you will, the development of this area by private property owners. So there are just so many pros to getting in front of this situation. We know it's ending. We know there's still a lot of work to be done to make this work. It just seems so elementary and simple. It's a lot of hard work, and there's a lot of really good thought that goes into it. But the time is now, and it's time to take this step. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Questions for Mr. Richlicki or comments? Alderman Brennan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go on record that I'm in full support of this TIF report before us this evening. First off, I don't think our work downtown is done. That's probably the most simplistic view. Secondly, I believe that the new downtown TIF gives us a unique opportunity to balance the needs of our downtown district, District 205 and the Park District, with the end results benefiting Elmhurst residents. In my opinion, it's imperative we continue to energize our downtown, partner with District 205 and the Park District to meet the expectations of our citizens. Thank you.
Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, I'm in full support of the downtown TIF. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. We got to keep in mind that there's a few things that are happening here. One is that we will be releasing early TIF 1 that will free up monies for all of the taxing bodies that are out there. That potential is there for us to do that. The other thing is that this TIF will allow us to capitalize on all of the development possibilities that are there that we've created in the last couple of years. It was mentioned before, and I think it's really important for us to emphasize this. Our zoning and building code changed for downtown. We've allowed some changes that are pretty significant, which are going to allow some more other developers to want to come into this community and have a great interest in looking at some opportunities that they may not have seen before because of the fact that our zoning and building have changed, our codes have changed. Allowing 6 stories in the core area is a critical component of this. This allows us to have more of a captive audience in our downtown. And for those of you who may have a question on what that means that we can have more offices downtown, we can have more residential downtown. Those are people who will be shopping downtown and spending money downtown. I've probably been here, in fact, I know I've been here through every one of the TIFs. From TIF 1, when it first started, I wasn't actually on the council, but I was sitting in the audience watching as TIF 1 started. And I will tell you that, as Alderman York said, we have seen TIF 1 be utilized in a phenomenal way because it's changed the downtown a number of times. We've been able to keep up with the changes in what's happening in the economy, not just in Elmhurst, but across the nation. You've seen us change from a retail environment to a much more of a service and a much more of a entertainment type environment today. If you notice today, we actually, to some degree, are leading the curve. If you go over to Oak Brook right now, or you go over to Yorktown right now, what you're gonna see is they're chasing after us right now. They're trying to change things. They've had to put in a new food court at Oak Brook. They're now putting in an ice skating rink because they're trying to become an entertainment venue. They know that what we're doing is the right thing, and they know that they've got to keep up with it because retail is not going to be the same as it was in the past. And I think we have a great opportunity here, and I think this is an opportunity that we cannot pass up, and I think we need to move forward with this because I think it's beneficial for Elmhurst, it's beneficial for all of the taxing bodies throughout the city of Elmhurst, and that's why we're doing this, is to increase that tax base for all of the taxing bodies, not just for the school, not just for the city.
Additional comments? Alderman Dunn.
Just an observation on the map, and I think whoever drew the boundary did a good job of excluding some of the recent developments, so Opus is not in there.
Correct.
FFC also, I think it makes sense to not have those in there because they're already developed. But some are, because of the geography, they're forced to be in there, like the Plas site. So can you comment on that one? Is it, what EAV on any current developments that are still contained in the TIF will show up?
If I understand your question, when the original, well, TIF 1 is terminated, whatever differential between whatever the value is and the base, that accrues to the benefit of all the taxing districts. Then that current EAV is now the new base as it moves forward. So the districts will have the benefit, even though properties are staying within the TIF, any growth over the original accrues to the benefit of the districts.
Okay, any additional comment? Sorry, Alderman Dunn, are you finished?
No, I think I got it.
All right. Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I guess, and Alderman Mulliner just spoke and might have actually answered my question, but I'd like to ask you, I keep hearing the generalization of our downtown needs more work. More needs to be done. And, you know, that always piques my curiosity because A, it's a generality, but B, you know, our vacancy rate is pretty close to zero. I would say 5%, and I'm throwing out a random number, but I know it's pretty low. Other aldermen have already spoken to the great restaurants downtown and the great additional businesses in general downtown, most of which had absolutely no incentive. So the service businesses that are down there today, most of which, I'm not saying all, but most of which had no incentive to come here. So I keep hearing, we need to do more, we need to do more, but after 33 years, you know, if you could speak at it in your professional opinion, what else needs to be done? And what I touched on, Alderman Mulliner's comments, was he made mention of, you know, needing offices in residential. Is that a need, in your opinion? And if so, why?
I'm a large proponent because I think there's more, knows more than I do, is following the market. You know, where thousands of decisions are made as it relates to real estate investment. One thing we have been seeing in terms of evolution of areas like the downtown, whether you call it a downtown or whether you call it the central core or core area, you know, relates to the, and especially in your case with transit-oriented, you know, development as it relates to the train station. You know, the marketplace as it relates to residential and mixed use it's there and it's still viable as it relates to, I think, Elmhurst and the core area. If you look at that map, one thing's going to become apparent. You see a lot of narrow, and especially in the purple area in the center, you see a lot of narrow and small lot sizes. Mixed-use developments are, and much of modern development is, you know, is driven by rents and driven by income. So in order to pay for assembly costs, in order to allow for certain construction to be funded, you're going to tie that into density, which means either some of the lots, similar to what you've seen on some of your projects like the Morningside, for example, or other residential or other mixed use, have utilized consolidation of lots. And in order to do that, there's a certain economic consequence. The other thing is, moving forward, many of the buildings that you said your vacancy rate is low, which is a good thing. But then there's the issue of sustainability, in our opinion, which is to continue to have interest in those facilities. Most of the, or a lot of the, you know, current uses have a rent of a certain type. I'm going to just pick a number. Let's say it's $12 a foot, $15 a foot. Many of those rents in the older buildings are what they call gross rents. So that includes insurance, it includes taxes, which means out of that $12 or the $15 a foot, maybe half of it is for expenses. The other half that's left can only be utilized for improvement. Good news, bad news, okay, you may have $6 or $7 left, but these are all older buildings. I mean, things like uneven floors, pillars, the ability to have, modern either communications or sprinklers, that's all an additional cost. And in order to do that, you're going to have to do better on the rents. Most of the higher rents in this area are for the newer buildings. I mean, that's just an economic fact. So the sustainability of the continued occupancy is going to be in part tied to the market and what you could get for rents and how long will, the train be, no pun intended, how long will the train be able to move forward. So looking forward, you do have to be sensitive to the market in terms of what our uses that would want to be here, and it's tied to investment. You can't fight City Hall. If the investment criteria and the where lenders are going is mixed-use projects and usually larger projects, most lenders, the sweet spot will be for certain developments will be anywhere between 100 and 200 units, which means a little skinny lot is not going to cut it. You have to put 4 or 5 of them together, possibly.
Additional questions? Alderman Brand?
Thank you. So it sounds like, from your comments, well, first off, I'd like to say I would love to find a property in our downtown that rents for $15 a square foot.
I said that was just the number I was pulling out.
No, I know. Because that is incredibly cheap, including if you're including insurance and everything else. But it sounds like you're in agreement with Alderman Mulliner's comments that, in your opinion, that there would be a need for the taller, higher density buildings, which would include offices and residential.
Right.
And I get longevity, but sometimes businesses fail because it's not the right marketplace, it's not the right timing. I mean, it could be a bad management, it could be 1,000 different things, right? I guess, my view on this, and if I could have the liberty of not asking any more questions of Mr., say it?
Rich Lickey, you're finished with Mr. Rich Lickey is what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Bob,
hold on
Bob works too.
before we go back. Anybody, I think Alderman Bram's saying he's going to make some additional comments, but has no more questions for Mr. Rich Lickey. Does anybody have any additional questions for Mr. Rich Lickey before we allow him to take a seat? Mr. Rich Lickey, we want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And your input this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, any other comments before we close conversation? Mr. Bram.
Thank you. And thank you, I'm going to attempt your name, Mr. Rizlicki. Close.
No problem. Thank you.
So, I'm not against in regards to moving forward with a new TIF in the downtown area. I don't see the reason being needing to move at this point in time. We have approximately 3 years left of this current TIF. I'm not saying wait until the 11th hour. This is the holiday season. I would love to give the opportunity for this presentation, what the committee has discussed in the presentation on board docs for others in the community to take a look at. I also am curious in regards to what the other governmental bodies have to say. I think the key component to this would be an IGA, teaming up with our other governmental bodies. And I know there's great discussion in regards to when it comes to TIF. On is it beneficial, how's it beneficial, does it do detriment, immediate detriment, I guess, and that might be a dramatic word, for the other governmental bodies while helping economic development, but withholding, that increase in EAV from the other governmental bodies. We've done, and I think we've worked well with the other governmental bodies, we've released properties. I think it was Alderman Mulliner made mention that, others have followed us, or maybe it was Alderman Honquist. I would like to know those details before saying we should move forward with an additional TIF. To me, it's a serious consideration going from what would be 36 years in one particular area, reduced in size, mind you, but going all the way up to 59 years. I already mentioned in regards to, our low vacancy rate. I already touched on in regards to what other TIFs, or what our previous TIF did from a base to where it ended up. And I think this is forecasted to be about the same. I just don't see the need at this time, and it sounds like, you know, the big draw here of doing this TIF is we need to build up. We need to sustain higher density, and by doing that, build up in the downtown core area. Obviously, that's not my personal vision, but the consensus has been to move forward with changing those zoning codes to allow for that to happen. I've heard over the years of that's been our greatest downfall, is we're restricted because we can't build density. But we changed our zoning codes. So why do we need to give density as well as give a TIF, continue a 23-year TIF to attract these different developments? There's a time, to me, when it comes to free market. Is 36 years enough to let free market take its place? I think the base has been established. I'm going to make a friendly request. I'm not going to make a motion, but to hold off on this report, hold off on voting on this report, maybe pull it back to committee, maybe plan for a presentation to the public at large. I know this is the beginning of the process. I just don't see why we need to do this tonight. And there's a lot of questions in regards to why we need to do it at all when we've already unhandcuffed any potential development by giving them the right to come into town and build 6 stories, and with conditional use up to 10.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just thinking that in comparing this potential TIF to our existing TIFs, what strikes me as the most different is that the area of tax-exempt parcels that are included. So it's not that we are freezing any revenue by including them, but additionally, the fact that they may directly benefit from the growth in increments. So any of those TIF eligible expenses may be allocated and directly funneled into them. So, it was touched on a little bit in the presentation, but taking a bigger look, that includes the 205 building, the library, the conservatory, Wilder Park, Wilder Mansion, the area around the library with parking, the YMCA, some of those things were mentioned, but I've never seen this in the other TIFs that we've seen. I know that we talked about that Fisher and Churchville are included in the North York TIF, but to me, this is the biggest distinction of this proposed TIF.
Okay, any additional comments? Clerk Spencer, please call the vote.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palomsky.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Deludo.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nay.
13 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 7.2 is approved. On to agenda item 8.1, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. Mayor Morley, that's me. I'll try to make this quick. We did things a little bit different this year. Normally, on or about the Thanksgiving Day weekend, we light the Christmas tree downtown Elmhurst, and Santa comes and helps me out and meets the kids. We went ahead and lit the Christmas tree without Santa this year and invited him to show up just this last Saturday for our first hometown holiday block party. And wouldn't you know it, Santa arrived on our trolley. We ran a holiday trolley this year, 2 Saturdays on December 9th and December 16th. We had 660 riders for 1 day on the 9th and 885 riders. I don't know if that count includes Santa. It's like a mythical ridership there, but 885 just this last Saturday. It was great. Santa showed up, took pictures with the kids. City Center folk were there. There was, you could have stopped, and certainly the restaurants were open, but there was also drinks available and tons of giveaways. The City Center even had like these mini lightsabers, so appropriate. So it was a great time had by all. Also, we have, as Alderman Dunn mentioned, and I was going to mention it as well, the Opus groundbreaking is Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and as Alderman Dunn pointed out, should this move forward, this DTIF and RETIF for the new downtown TIF, Opus would be one of the places that would actually be released and stay released. A couple other announcements. In talking to Santa, he agreed that there will be no committee meetings on the 26th of this month. Our January meeting is not on Monday the 1st due to the holiday. It is on Monday the 2nd. Tuesday the 2nd. Okay. Any other, City Manager?
Yeah, just a couple more things that this Friday afternoon and Monday, City Hall will be closed for the Christmas Eve and Christmas holidays. And then, as Mayor said, January 1st for the New Year's Day holiday.
Any other reports? Ooh, Alderman Dunn.
Yeah, I was going to let the mayor speak about the, our most recent ONCC meeting, since he did attend. I know he enjoyed it.
I left my notes in the office.
He enjoyed it thoroughly. So just a quick update on what happened there. We had a vote, a consideration before the ONCC to move forward with the interim fly quiet, proposed 2-year or 2.5-year plan. And that was option A in particular. That was discussed. First, I made a motion to move the public comment before the deliberations. That was considered, discussed, and ultimately that failed by vote of the commission. Then there was another motion to delay the vote until the January meeting to gather more information. Again, that ultimately failed, and we voted on the proposed IFQ, and there was a lot of very well-attended meeting. I don't know the final count, but it was up in the 50s to accept the plan, and I think it was 8 that had voted against the plan. So that unfortunately that move forward goes to the FAA for review, environmental impact study for about a year, and then that will most likely be implemented, that runway rotation plan for 2 years or thereabout. So we'll continue to work with the FAA and stay very active in the ONCC on these type of issues that impact Elmhurst for noise and other topics. Thanks.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thanks for bringing that up, Alderman Dunn. I did attend the meeting along with several residents from Elmhurst. Alderman Brand was there, among others. Mary Ann LeVar, who is assistant for Congressman Quigley. Long story short, as Alderman Dunn pointed out, I think it was 50-8, was the last, maybe 51-8 against our desires. All of the decision-making has really been done, is completed at ONCC. It now goes to the FAA. There's going to be an environmental study, might be a shortened environmental study. There was a lot of conversation on that. Bottom line is our next steps as a community, as elected officials and as a community, really fall to continued communication with the FAA and continued communication with our federally elected representatives. We will continue to be part of ONCC. That still is our best resource as the O'Hare Modernization Plan continues to move forward. That's our best resource for information as things progress at O'Hare. We kind of have a standing request to be added to the ad hoc committee. They kind of punted on all of our questions and comments and stuff before this meeting. So we will be reiterating our desire to join the ad hoc committee. But really, the fight has moved on from ONCC to FAA. Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to say I as well was very disappointed on the outcome. There is, I would say, maybe I'm far-reaching a little bit, there was really no technical discussion during the ONCC general meeting on what should be the interim fly quiet plan. There was discussion, and I want to publicly thank Alderman Dunn for questioning and asking additional questions in regards to how the proceedings were going on. There was some rebuttals from the chairperson during public comment. But the proceeding, I'll just say I was dissatisfied with the proceeding overall. Quite frankly, in my opinion, I don't understand on how anybody voted yes for that, because it was, any of the plans really were an incomplete plan, because the 422 runways are going to be under construction during this interim time, and they didn't provide any view, even a guesstimate, on what runways will be utilized during this construction period. So when the other 422 is under construction, they didn't state that our 422 for our 22L would be the one that's being utilized for that 6 months to a year, however long that construction takes. So to vote on a plan that you don't have all the answers to, I'm disappointed that anybody moved forward with saying yes. I'm disappointed there didn't seem to be, at least from my seat, any reason to have the vote that time. Like I said, there wasn't very much in regards to technical discussion, but as the mayor already stated, the next step in the process is going to be the EIS, and I just ask all residents to, keep your eyes out and participate in the process when it comes to the EIS and what impacts it would have to our community, which seems to be significant, and some would even say more significant than the Fly Quiet Rotation 3, which was detrimental to at least a couple of the wards in town.
Okay, any other reports? Seeing no other reports, on other business, any other business? I have some other business. Real quick, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year to all. I want to thank the public for their participation in our meetings and their trust in us. I want to thank staff for their hard work and their thick skin. And I also want to thank the elected officials for their dedication and time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Mulliner. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.